sales and marketing mostly, although I did spend a period of time as a school math teacher. And we'll come on to that in a bit more detail later. Hervé Engineering, we're based in Towerfield Road in Shoebury. The company's been here for 20 years, I believe, coming up 20 years. Prior to that, it was based in Progress Road, pretty much since the 1950s. And before that was based in London. But its origins date back to northern France, back in 1850, when the company started making taps. But at some point in the dim and distant past, and nobody seems to know why, it moved from France to London. There are 18 people that work in our company. We're an engineering subcontractor, so we make things on behalf of other people. Our customers based in the UK, Europe, and some of them in the United States. I'll just mute that volume. This is what we do. We make turn parts. So we run computer-controlled lathes that essentially you push a bar of metal through, and then the tools will cut it into whatever shape you need it to be. And the engineers that we employ have the skill set that can enable them to take a drawing of a part and convert it into the motions you see down below there, and the part that's subsequently made. So we make parts out of brass, copper, steel, stainless steel, and there's many different varieties of stainless steel. Some of them go into very high-grade, complex parts, be it nuclear engineering or motorsport. So they've got particular materials, particular properties that are required. And the more particular they become, the more expensive they get, and sometimes the harder they are to actually cut. And we also work with nylons and plastics. So we don't actually make any products of our own. We make everything for everybody else. So a customer will send us a drawing and we will make their part. Sometimes they send us the CAD models and we can make parts from the CAD models. We are not aerospace regulated, but we do make aerospace parts that go to a regulated supplier. So a company like Airbus may have 12,000 suppliers, but in reality, Airbus themselves probably deal directly with 4 or 5 companies, and those 4 or 5 companies then manage the thousands of suppliers. And we tend to supply into some of those people. Again, there are certain parts that we can make and certain parts for aviation regulations that we cannot make unless we were particularly regulated for aerospace manufacture. We are ISO 9001 regulated. We have full material traceability for all of our customers, so we can find which particular batch of material we used and which mill it came from or which forge it came from originally. I think the oldest certificate we've got at the moment is from 1957. There's a piece of material that was issued to a customer and we still have files on that. So a customer, as I say, we make bespoke parts for customers. They will send us a drawing, and this is an example of a drawing that came from a customer. And the eventual part we make is that little piece on the top. If I just zoom in on that. So this is made, I think, from stainless steel. It comes from a round bar of material, and we essentially cut away all the material that we don't need, leaving those components. And if you can see that end there, this part goes into a fire sprinkler system for commercial buildings. And the sprinkler system needs to be tested every month, but you can't test the sprinkler system because you make everybody wet. So this particular customer of ours has come up with a valve system that can be placed on each floor of the building, and they can test the water supply and the pressure of the water at each level. So this is part of the valve system, and this little groove down here needs to be of specific dimensions because a small rubber ring will go over that, which forms part of the seal and controls the water flow. So these are what the bars look like. They tend to be 3 meters, sometimes slightly longer, maybe 3.5 meters long. And we put them into a cassette, which essentially pushes them through the lathe. So once we've set the lathe, once we've set the part on the machine, we can then produce thousands of parts, sometimes with not a lot of human intervention. So we can convert, this is a bar of brass, we can convert that into a part like this. So we're able to turn it, remove material, put a thread on there, and in this case, we put a square or hexagonal sides onto the part, so you can enable the customer to tighten up with a spanner. This was the drawing that originally came from the customer. And again, our engineers will be able to look at this and take the lengths and all of the small cuts that are required and set the machine accordingly. The tightest tolerance that we've worked to is plus or minus 5 microns. So to give you some sort of context, a sheet of A4 printer paper is about 100 microns thick. A human hair is about 70 microns thick. And we can get the machine to work to plus or minus 5 microns. As you can imagine, that's on the realms of us not really being able to measure it after that. That's as fine detail as we can go into. And there's a bucket of parts. So the machine will run, ideally the machine will just run unmanned. Sometimes when we're not here, we can close the factory at night and leave, and the machines will run for some hours afterwards, producing these parts. And we get lots of swarf. So swarf is the name for the material that's cut away. And we get obviously all of our materials, be it brass, copper, stainless steel, or various plain mild steels, all get recycled. They all go back to the mill. They all get melted down and made into new parts. So they're very expensive. The materials are expensive. The swarf has a value to it. So we do work quite hard to capture and return as much of that as we can. That's just a quick look at our website. This is the biggest way we attract customers. My business partner and I bought the business 5 years ago because we could see that there was an opportunity. We both had a sales and marketing background. There was an opportunity for really for the company to be brought up to date. Prior to our joining, the last Mr. Hervé had been a member of the family business most of his working life, so it really needed some fresh ideas and some fresh input, and we like to think that's what we've done. Looking at the wider industry in the UK and in our corner of the UK here in Essex, there's maybe 350, 400 companies across the UK that do what we do. Generally small companies, but there are some big ones. I've listed on there. GKN, Meggitt, and Renishaw are big listed companies. But the vast majority of the work is done by small firms, which we've got a turnover of about 2 million. We employ 18 people, and that's generally what you're going to find. There are different layers of company. We've invested heavily in plant and materials since we've been here, and we're able to make these parts, as I say, down to maybe 5 microns. Other people possibly won't be quite as advanced in their operation. There are a couple of companies in Southend, Waverley Brownell, IPECO. I think IPECO runs some training courses. They're both slightly different to us in that they do make their own products. So they're selling products for which turn parts are components, whereas we're a pure subcontracting customer. So we're making parts for lots of other customers in lots of different sectors. There is a cluster of companies in Basildon, and certainly pre-pandemic, is yet to see how the world shapes up for the aerospace sector, but there were quite a few aerospace companies, people like ESL, Leonardo, and Gardner Aerospace based in Basildon that were big contributors or big suppliers to the likes of Airbus and Boeing. But again, the whole world with aircraft on the ground and not being used, and not so many new ones being made, the world has changed. And we are, as it says at the bottom there, we're part of the British Turnpart Manufacturers Association, which gives us an opportunity to meet other firms similar to us and ensure that what we're doing is kind of best practice. That's the business end of one of our lathes. This is a sliding head machine. We'll take a bar diameter up to 32 millimeters, so just over 1.25 inches. And then to the left of this picture, this is the control panel here, but to the left of this picture would be the 3-meter bar loader cassette that pushes the bars through automatically. These are some of the job roles that we have at Hervé. We're fully staffed at the moment, but these are the kind of jobs we have here. The machine setter and the engineer. So these are the guys that will have the highest skill set, I would say, within the organisation. They have the capability to take a sheet of A4, print of a drawing, and convert that into an actual part and get the machine to run. So they're fully aware of how to cut metal, all the different kinds of metal we use, because some metals you can cut faster than others. If you try and cut stainless steel quickly, you'll break tools or you'll make the machine too hot. Something like brass cuts much quicker. So we've got people here that have been doing this for many years, and they can very quickly take a drawing and write a program and make the component. I did some years ago do a brief stint as a math teacher at a secondary school, and one of the things I couldn't answer when children asked what use is trigonometry, how would I use that in my everyday life? I couldn't really think of a good answer. Well, now I can, because the people that do the programming here are using trigonometry the whole time to work out the various angles and curves that we have on these parts. So requirement, really, the biggest requirement is an understanding of maths. So possibly a GCSE grade 5 as a minimum, I think. In old money, I think that's kind of a grade C, possibly into a B. Ideally, I'd say probably a B. We do have an apprentice. We met a young man called David a couple of years ago at a Southend Council sponsored careers event at the library. And he was very keen and interested in what we did. We eventually hired him as an apprentice. He's been with us a couple of years. He is very good and spends one day a week at what was Procat in Basildon. And the qualification he's studying for is the engineering technician, machinist, advanced manufacturing. They, I do think, have their own entry requirements. So if anybody was interested in apprenticeships, it would be worth looking at their website. In addition to that, we also have a 3-person quality control team. So it's really important that what we make is correct. I'm not sure if you can see the screen behind me, but our kind of watchwords here are quality, price, and delivery. And we work hard to make sure that the parts are delivered on time at a fair price, and obviously to drawing. They have to be correct. And for lots of customers that we deliver to, they will go straight at their end. They will go straight onto production line and be used without any further inspection. So we spend a lot of time checking the parts meet the customer's drawing, and I'll show you a little bit more about that in a moment. And then administration and sales. So my business partner and I spend a lot of time talking to customers, writing quotes, buying tools, and obviously the raw materials, which is a challenge at the moment because of the supply issues that we seem to have. So I mentioned inspection. This is a machine, an investment we made earlier on in the summer to replace an older machine we had. This will automatically measure the parts that we've made. So essentially, you need to write a program and then tell the computer where the part is, and it will then go on and measure it. So let me show you a short video of this. So there's a piece on the end there that's essentially scanning all the way around this circular part we've made, and this can measure to within 5 microns. So we've got to make sure that to the naked eye that looks round, but we've got to actually make sure that within a very tight tolerance that is round, and the sides of that disc are parallel. So the parts up the side here, although they're only possibly a few millimeters thick, they need to be parallel. Now, not this particular part, but some parts we make like this go into vacuum pumps. And there's a huge demand for vacuum pumps because that is what are used to manufacture chips, semiconductors. of which the world seems to be very short at the moment. There's quite a conversational programming language used on this machine. It's called a CMM, a coordinate measuring machine. But that's essentially the code that you end up with. Again, the machine will help you through in a conversational style, but that's the code you end up with. So a good understanding of maths is quite useful to run that machine. That's one of the parts we make, and that is about it. If you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Michael. That is a really fascinating workplace to see inside of. I'm sure lots of us work with young people where that would be absolutely fascinating for them to join. So it was really great to hear more about the different roles and everything like that. I will first of all just ask one of my questions and then it'll be over to the room. Some of these look really quite technical with all the coding and all of that side of things. Is it an opportunity for people to join after college and work their way up, or are you looking for sort of, do you have any degree level people come in, just because it looks quite technical from my perspective?
I don't think there's anybody here with a degree. Most people have joined as an apprentice, and David, the chap I spoke about, joined us a couple of years ago. He is going to be on I think a 3 or 4 year course at the college, but he'll probably do most of his learning with us. And there is a coding language you need to learn, and over time and using it, you become familiar with the various codes that are required to make the machine. Essentially, the machine is moving in X, Y, and Z, and you just need to tell it how far to go in each direction, and what speed to go at, and there's various ways to shortcut movements. So rather than going to the left and then up, you can kind of go straight across the between the 2 points. But that coding comes. It is complicated, and you couldn't just walk in off the street and do it. But with on-the-job knowledge and a college course to back up, it should be fine.
Okay, that's great, thank you. That's really interesting to know as well, because I think that would suit quite a lot of our young people. Next hand that was up was Amir Ghanari.
Hi, morning. Hi, Michael. Nice to see you again. That was really interesting. Thank you. I'm from Southend Council, and just wanted to ask about. You mentioned about haven't got any roles at the moment. How sort of many do you tend to have kind of coming up? Is it sort of a couple a year, or something of that order, or how does it sort of generally work?
It depends how how the business grows. So we've managed to double our turnover in the 5 years that we've been here, and we're probably only maybe 2 or 3 people more on the payroll, because part of the bringing the business up to date and into the modern age is we become much more efficient at what we do. So we can do slightly more with less people, or not so many more people. We're always keen to have qualified setters. They're the hardest people to find. Having said that, the pandemic was very good for us. So during the pandemic, we didn't close. We just changed the shift into, or split the staff into 2 shifts so that everybody was had their own space. We didn't furlough anybody, and we got involved with the ventilator project at one stage back in March and April of last year. I think we made a couple of 100,000 fittings for air and gas. And that also threw up an opportunity because other companies maybe weren't so fortunate. We found 2 people that joined us that were highly skilled and had been in their companies for a long time. And I think it was the pandemic that persuaded them to maybe change roles. So we're very keen to hire those. There is an age thing. I mean, most of our skilled guys, just by the nature of it, are older. So we're looking to reduce the age where we can. We will be looking to take on another apprentice at some point in the not too distant future, just so that when David's qualified, there's somebody else in the pipeline. So we are trying to grow our own talent. David is the 4th apprentice we've hired. The previous 3, one chap lasted 2 days, and the longest one I think lasted about a year. but they decide that it's maybe not what they thought it was, it's not the industry for them, and they've moved on. But David's showing really good potential, and we've spent a lot of time and invested heavily. We've had him trained by the machine manufacturing company, how the machines work and how the measuring machines work. So we're hopeful that he will go on to be a really good qualified employee and young, help bring the average age down.
Brilliant, thank you.
That's great, thanks. And Amir, if you haven't linked up with Mike already, which I suspect you have, Amir's got a fantastic programme that he oversees, and there's an advanced manufacturing work stream in it, isn't there, where you're training different people? So you might be in contact in the future.
Excellent.
Thank you.
From Amir's face, I may have got that slightly wrong, but
I think it's now we've got various work streams that because of the jobs in the area, we haven't got the advanced manufacturing emphasised, because it's tended to be responsive to more entry level roles in Southends that have been up. So that's kind of one that's not there at the moment due to the general kind of lack of entry level roles coming through in the Southend area sort of at the moment. So that's where the position's been so far.
Okay, fab. Thanks very much, Amir. Thanks for that explanation. Next up, we've got Yvonne with her hand up.
Hi, hi, yeah. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, hi. My name is Yvonne. Work for Thurrock Council. I'm an enterprise coordinator like Rosie, and one of my jobs is finding work experience. Do you take on work experience, Michael?
We haven't really. It's very difficult from a health and safety point of view. It's something we'd like to do. We can certainly look into it, but it's very difficult because of virtually everything we use can kill you. So we need to make sure people are aware of what the risks are. There's lots of guards and everything else to be used on machines, but just to have somebody come along and we can't really just give them a 20-minute introduction to the premises and that be safe. So we haven't to date, but I think going back to what I was saying earlier on, for people to know that this is something they want to do, they kind of do need to have some exposure to it. So it's something we'd like to do, but we just have to get our heads around the health and safety aspects and the training that we require before any placements.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. Laura Bramley in the chat has said, "Hi, Mike. It would be great to discuss looking for another apprentice soon. We are just organising another apprenticeship event next year, and it's great to hear that you found someone." I suppose just one more question from me then is, you mentioned your new apprentice that has stayed with you. You knew sort of almost straight away that he'd be a really good fit for the role. What is it that made him stand out for future young people looking to approach employers?
He was, I think, quite gifted mathematically. I think he achieved a B at GCSE, and I think he did A levels. But certainly the B, and in some of the questions he asked, he seemed to be quite focused on that. And I think it is, unfortunately, it is a requirement that if you're going to write the code, you need to have some appreciation. Even working in the office, we spend most of our time converting things from inches to millimeters and kilograms to tons, and working out the price of things in various different ways, whether we're given the price per bar or the price per kilogram for material. So there is a certain ability to, certainly on the shop floor, the mathematical thing is going to be the most important.
That's great, thank you. That's been a really great session. We've got one hand up from Amir. I don't know if it's one that was left, so I'll just leave it. Amir, any more questions? Oh, perfect. But yeah, any other questions before we close up the session? Okay, that's been really fantastic, Michael. Thank you for taking your time to speak to us across Essex this morning. Everyone, thank you very much for attending. It's been great to see you here this morning. This is the first in our series, and we'll be kicking off the next one with health and social care. I think I'll double check the schedule, but I'll be recirculating the schedule, and please book on to our future events. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.